Time now for our political roundtable here on OTR. And joining us this morning, Adrienne Walker, associate editor, columnist at the Boston Globe, and Republican analyst Jenny Buckingham. It's great to see you guys. Thanks for being with us this morning. Adrienne, let's start with you, and let's start with your thoughts about Congressman Auchincloss, who was with us this morning.
I think he's done well as a congressman. I'm interested to see where he's going next. I personally think he's probably running for Senate, but we'll see.
Yeah, going next. That's the big question.
He's going places.
He wouldn't say.
He said he was running for re-election. Yes.
He didn't say no, and that spoke volumes. I thought it was smart that he's focused on what Democrats should be for, but he didn't actually say what those things were. So I think he has to get better at articulating what he's fighting for.
What do you think of this new initiative, Majority Democrats, where they're in the center and they're hoping to advance those ideas as well?
I mean, that's what they have to do, because all they are talking about is how they're still fighting Trump, which is how they lost the last election. So he's on the right track, but again, what does that mean? All
right. President Trump's approval rating has taken a dip since he signed the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. A poll by YouGov has his approval at 42%. Morning Consult Nate Silver has it hovering around 45%, while Rasmussen has it at 49%. Gallup is at 40%. Now, some of those numbers are lower than any modern president at the same time in their administrations. Ginny, 6 months in, should he be concerned about this?
I mean, they're always going to be concerned about polls, but we are quite a ways away from the midterm elections, which is really what this polling is all about, is who is going to win the House and Senate. He needs to explain his big, beautiful bill better. The Democrats need to do a better job on their end, too. I saw another poll that came out last week that said their perspective is still that they are elitists. That's how people see them. They haven't changed that either.
What do you think, Adrienne?
You know, the thing about Trump is that he's got this core of people that never budge, no matter what. And it really doesn't seem to matter whether he's at 49 or 44. The outcome for him always seems to be the same.
The next issue is to Beacon Hill. Republicans have been critical of the governor for not disclosing when she is out of state and traveling. Last week, the lieutenant governor served as acting governor, and reporters must request her monthly calendar, the governor's. But exactly where she has been is not known to the public until her administration releases it, and frequently it's weeks later. The governor has said that she does not reveal when she is out of state for undisclosed security reasons. Is this a layup for Republican candidates who want to criticize the governor for transparency, Adrienne?
Yes, but more importantly, I just think it's a bad practice. I think the people in Massachusetts have a right to know who's running the state today. And I don't think she's explained why any of this is necessary.
Jenny, what do you think?
I mean, I served as chief of staff to two governors, and we never withheld where they were at any given time. It is kind of a no-brainer. It doesn't make any sense to me why they're doing it.
And worth mentioning, it is, I mean, people need vacations, right?
Of course.
That is certainly
no one's
possible.
questioning that.
No one's questioning that. It's just whether or not who's in charge of the state at any given time.
And do we have a right to know where the governor is at all times?
I think so.
I think we do.
Yeah. All right, criminal defendants are being released in Massachusetts because some defense lawyers are taking part in a work stoppage. Now, these are called bar advocates. They're private lawyers the state pays to represent clients who can't afford attorneys. They say the pay is too low compared to neighboring states, so they're not taking new cases until things change. They are technically not allowed to strike, but that seems like what this is. Do you think it's time, Ginny, for the legislature to step in?
Sounds like teachers who also are not allowed to strike and do anyway. Look, I think that they're going to win this battle but lose the war is my take. They're probably going to get a pay raise, but I bet CPCS, which is the state agency that represents indigent defendants, is going to get more money so that bar advocates have less work. I think that's what's going to happen. They made the House Ways and Means chair pretty mad. I won't say the bad word.
Right.
Pretty mad, and I think they're going to pay a price.
What do you think, Adrienne?
Well, first of all, I think I don't think it's a strike because they're private employees. But also, I think the legislature should fix it by solving the problem. Aaron Michaelowicz, the Ways and Means chair, says to me it's a $60 million problem. They should find the money and fix this.
Right. Senators on the Education Committee advanced a bill to ban cell phones in public schools. It is now in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. The bill would require all schools in the state to create and enforce policies around cell phone use during the school day. If it eventually passes, it would take effect not next year, but the 26-27 school year. So here's a list of some states in the union with bans or restrictions on cell phones. As you can see, California, Florida, South Carolina, Ohio. This is a geographically and politically diverse group of states. Ginny, is this a topic that transcends political parties?
I think it's wrong, and this is why. I'm an AI novice, but I think in 10 years we're going to be handing phones to every kid starting in nursery school so that they have digital savvy education. And I think the horse is way out of the barn, way too late to take this step and have it matter. And we want our kids to be able to use technology, not be kept away from
So,
technology.
do you think it should be banned from schools?
And absolutely not. I think that we ought to use the opportunity to teach kids how to responsibly use digital tools.
Adrian.
I agree. I could see some kinds of restrictions, but I don't see how you could effectively ban it or why you would want to.
But don't you think that they're a distraction?
Yes,
for
which
kids
is why I believe
and designed
some
to be.
restrictions would be fine. But do you really think you can ban cell phones from schools?
Well, that's a big
I'm not
question.
a parent, but I can't see it.
I mean, rather than regulating that they can't use ChatGPT in school, let's teach them how to use it well so that they can use their brains to learn other things. That's where we are as a society, but schools, like always, are going to be way behind.
Something tells me Adrian would find a way to get a cell phone into classroom. All right, a Massachusetts lawmaker is proposing a ban that would prevent ICE agents from wearing masks in Massachusetts. Now, State Representative Jim Hawkins pointed to the Rameza Ozturk case as a reason why the Tufts University student who was arrested by masked ICE agents in Somerville. Now, Hawkins did admit he doesn't have the power to force federal agents to take off their masks, but he says he really wants to start a conversation. Is this the newest way, Adrian, that states can try to push the federal government on this issue?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's doing, and I think he knows he'll lose, but it doesn't matter. The fight is the point.
You think the people are with him?
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think?
I don't think that people are with him because I think there's a real reason that ICE agents are wearing masks, and that is because they are targeted by terrorist gangs and they are protecting themselves. When we're talking about safety, I think that's what this is all about, and I think it's silly for a state legislator to spend his time on an issue like this when his constituents are dealing with real issues.
All right, we will be right back as we continue our conversation on the record. Stay with us.